groovy.
Horror, chainsaws, and mass amounts of blood. These were the ingredients chosen to create the ultimate experience in grueling horror. But Sam Raimi also added an extra ingredient to the concoction: slapstick. Thus, the Evil Dead trilogy was born! Using their ultra-groovy powers, Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and Robert Tappert have dedicated their lives to fighting the Necronomicon and the forces of evil! The Evil Dead horror franchise is one that's been down a strange, transformative road. It started out as straight-up horror, progressed to slapstick, and eventually ended up in all-out comedy, making it one of the scariest, nastiest, and goofiest franchises of all time. The remake of the first movie went back to its roots and did scare the pants off us again, though. Let's check out this transformative process of the ever-evolving series for ourselves, and go back to the cabin again, and get trapped in time where we're surrounded by evil and low on gas. Before we dive into the movies, let's get to know the filmmakers behind them. That is, Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and Robert Tappert. Growing up together, Raimi and Campbell made more than a few low-budget Super 8 films together. Mostly comedies with titles like William Shakespeare the Movie, Clockwork, and It's Murder. But shooting a suspenseful scene in It's Murder inspired them to try their hands in the horror genre. Inspired by other low-budget horror films of the time like Night of the Living Dead, Last House on the Left, and of course, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, their first big project was more of a proof-of-concept short film made in order to attract the attention of early investors titled Within the Woods. Produced with about $1,600, the short is about two teenage couples spending a weekend together at a remote cabin in the woods. The cabin just happens to be built on an old Indian burial ground, and eventually supernatural horror shenanigans ensue. Sound familiar? Raimi hit up literally anyone he thought would be interested in donating to the project, and the prototype short eventually helped him raise enough money from local investors to get started. Although not the full amount he originally wanted, he ended up with about $375,000 to produce a full-length film. The guy's a hustler. With their funds secured, they set out to make their feature with Raimi directing, Campbell producing and starring, and their friend and frequent collaborator Robert Tappert producing as well. Raimi drew inspiration from his interest in stories by H.P. Lovecraft and decided to base the story around the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, aka the Book of the Dead, and originally gave the movie the same title. Basically a remake of Within the Woods, the Book of the Dead followed about the same plot as the short. Teenagers, cabin, evil is disturbed, horrible things happen. To round out the rest of the cast, Raimi put an ad in the Detroit News. Betsy Baker answered the call and was cast as Linda. Ellen Sandwies, who was in Within the Woods, was cast as Cheryl, Hal Diedrich as Scott, and Sarah York as Shelley. And we all know Bruce Campbell as Ash. If you don't know who Bruce Campbell is, you're about to find out. He's basically the greatest B-movie actor of all time, and we'll be seeing a lot of him here. The making of The Evil Dead was a challenging time, to say the least. The crew basically consisted almost entirely of Raimi and Campbell's friends and family, and the crew members who they liked working with from Within the Woods. Tom Sullivan was brought back on to handle the practical effects, and I gotta say, they're still pretty great. Look at this shit. And a lot of the sound effects actually really sell the movie too.
One by one we will take you.
A remote cabin in Morristown, Tennessee was chosen for the location, and the 13-member crew had to stay on location at the cabin in notoriously difficult living conditions. When they arrived at the cabin location, the crew discovered it was overgrown, and because of a farm nearby, the floor of the cabin was covered in a 4-inch layer of cow manure. The cabin had low ceilings and virtually no doors, no electricity or plumbing. It didn't even have a real cellar, so one had to be dug out. The first few days were spent digging out the cow manure, ripping out the ceiling, repainting walls, and running electricity throughout the cabin. To accommodate the indie guerrilla necessities of the shoot, the crew had to build several elaborate low-budget rigs since they could not afford a camera dolly. One involved the Vasocam, which relied on a mounted camera sliding down wooden platforms to create a more fluid sense of motion. Another innovative way they shot The Evil Dead was by using the shaky cam. Two people would hold a piece of wood with the camera mounted on it and traverse around the swamp, creating these iconic shots. This creative effect, which consisted of Raimi dodging through the forest and swamp, has been used a lot, not only in this first movie, but every incarnation of Evil Dead since. In fact, you can see it to this day in all kinds of different movies now. like and subscribe. Not only did the crew have to deal with less than perfect conditions, the cast did too. Excruciatingly long hours in uncomfortable makeup, including irritating contact lenses. Bruce Campbell got stuck to the floor from all the fake blood, and Sarah York even had to have a real chainsaw inches from her neck. When the harrowing shoot was finally completed, and after a small but surprisingly successful premiere at Detroit's Redford Theater, Raimi decided to take the movie on the road with a small tour to build hype for the film. Raimi showed the movie to basically anyone who was willing to watch it, including distribution agents and anyone involved in the film industry. Eventually, the film caught the attention of Irvin Shapiro, who had distributed George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Irvin joked that it wasn't Gone with the Wind, but he thought it had commercial potential. It was also Irving who suggested a name change. He thought the Book of the Dead would bore some people and make them think they were about to see a movie about reading. After brainstorming several titles, Raimi eventually landed on the quote, least worst title they could come up with, The Evil Dead. And the rest, baby, is history. Shapiro was a founder of the Cannes Film Festival and allowed Raimi to screen the film at the 1982 festival out of competition. None other than Stephen King was present at the screening and gave the film a rave review, which, according to Campbell, really helped the film gain some recognition. King's description of The Evil Dead being the most ferociously original film of the year ended up on the poster for the film to great success. This gave the film some clout and attracted the attention of critics who may have otherwise dismissed the low-budget horror film. After some early positive critical reception, a write-up in Fangoria, and the endorsement from King, The Evil Dead had gained some impressive buzz. It caught the attention of New Line Cinema, and they negotiated an agreement to distribute it domestically.
Evil Dead. They got up on the wrong side of the grave. Evil Dead from New Line Cinema.
After a few widely enthusiastic sneak previews, interest for the film was so high that a wider distribution was planned. The Little Horror film's release was also met with controversy almost right from the get-go. Raimi had shot the film the way he wanted, as horrendous as possible with no consideration for censorship. This led to an X rating and the film being labeled as a video nasty. If you're not familiar with the term, a video nasty is more of a British colloquial term used to describe typically low-budget, exploitational horror films distributed on VHS that are highly criticized for their violent and disturbing content. You see, when this movie first came out, it was considered to be one of the most violent films of its time, maybe even of all time, along with the likes of Cannibal Holocaust and I Spit on Your Grave. In fact, this movie was and is still banned either theatrically or on video in some countries. The Evil Dead is also one of those movies that found a new life on home video. After being dubbed the #1 nasty, the film made over £100,000 in the UK in its first week of video release. It later became the year's best-selling video in the UK, even outgrossing movies like The Shining. The Evil Dead is by far one of my very favorite horror franchises. And it all started here. I love its ingenuity, its originality, and its rawness. There's a youthful energy present, and you can tell they actually really gave a shit about making this movie. It's the best home movie ever made. It starts out a little goofy with its DIY approach, and numerous bloopers like Robert Tappert on the bridge here, crew shadows, and haircut and t-shirt changes, but I find them all sort of charming in a way, and once it gets going, it doesn't let up. Once the Evil Dead starts permeating its way into the small group of friends, shit gets real. The tree rape scene is something I've never really seen in another horror film, and it definitely sticks with you. Watching this scene as a kid with my dad was super fun, let me tell you. And when the horror really starts to spread, the film becomes genuinely scary.
2 spades, jack of diamonds, jack of clubs!
Not only that, the gore gets revved up from practically nothing to 11. And most of the jump scares still work today. The actors are all pretty great too. Bruce Campbell has always been the man and shines as a great physical actor. The movie has some good moments of comedy too. This guy Scott is such a dick.
That is the stupidest thing I ever heard of.
Hey, I'm gonna break your face.
She's nuts.
I don't care what happens to her. She's your girlfriend, you take care of her.
This kind of looks like your old girlfriend.
Haha, totally. This movie also started a sort of back and forth reference war with Wes Craven. There's a Hills Have Eyes poster in the basement in this scene, which Craven responded to with having the Evil Dead featured in A Nightmare on Elm Street, which was in turn answered in Evil Dead 2. The film is quite an achievement for an indie horror movie. It leaves such a big impact for such a small film. I'm not saying this is the horror movie that made horror movies cool, but it sure helped. Sure, some movies had chainsaws and shotguns before, but The Evil Dead gave it a gritty attitude. It also let a whole new generation of filmmakers know that they could do whatever they wanted if they were dedicated enough. It makes you jump and laugh and scream. A true cinematic experience. One thing that this movie didn't do, though, unlike horror films like Last House on the Left and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was to build a reputation for its director. Raimi made another movie with Campbell called Crime Wave, which they actually collaborated on with the Coen brothers, but it was a box office disaster. Raimi has actually worked with the Coen brothers a few times. Joel Coen even worked on Evil Dead as an assistant editor in his first movie gig. Fortunately for Raimi, though, he had studio support to make a sequel to his first movie. When I was a kid, I used to walk around my local video store searching for a movie or an N64 game to get me through the weekend. I have a lot of memories of old VHS covers that always caught my eye back in the day, mostly horror ones like these, but there was one that always stood out more than the others and had me creating a wide berth around it when I passed by: Evil Dead 2. This grinning skeleton rictus was the stuff of nightmares for me. Little did I know I'd fall in love with this particular title about a decade later. After the critical and commercial failure that was Crime Wave, Raimi, Tappert, and Campbell decided to go back to what they knew worked, thinking another flop would only stall or completely destroy their already floundering careers. Originally, Raimi wanted to have Ash suck through a time portal to the Middle Ages where he could encounter the medieval dead. So he and an old friend, Scott Spiegel, a cohort from their Super 8 days, got to work on a script. Enter producer Dino De Laurentiis, the owner of the Italian production and distribution company De Laurentiis Entertainment Group. He was working on a deal with Stephen King that involved producing several of his horror novels and short stories. He asked Raimi if he would be interested in directing an adaptation of King's novel Thinner, and though he turned it down, De Laurentiis and Raimi stayed on each other's radar. Once again, Stephen King is one of the reasons we get to see Bruce Campbell cut up deadites with a chainsaw. While working on his own directorial debut of Maximum Overdrive, he was having dinner with a crew member on Evil Dead 2. When the crew member told him that Raimi was having trouble securing funding for the film, King asked his producer, none other than De Laurentiis, to fund it. Although initially skeptical, De Laurentiis met with Raimi's production company Renaissance, who highlighted the first film's extremely high revenue in the Italian market. Within 20 minutes, De Laurentiis agreed to finance Evil Dead 2 for $3.6 million. De Laurentiis did request a movie that was more like their first one instead of their medieval-themed proposal, though. So once again, we find ourselves with Ash and a group of people at the haunted cabin. Spiegel felt that they should revisit their roots in comedy from their Super 8 days, and this influence can be felt throughout the entire film. Raimi and Campbell are famously fans of the Three Stooges, and once you know that, it's obvious where it all came from. Raimi even goes so far as to credit some of the crew members as fake shimps. And for those of you who don't know, Shemp was one of the original Three Stooges. While the film's production wasn't as chaotic or as challenging as the first, due to the filmmaker's growing experience, it was not without hardship. Sam Raimi's brother Ted Raimi, who usually shows up in his movies, had a hell of a time playing Professor Noby's demonically possessed wife Henrietta. He had to wear a full-body latex costume, crouch in a small hole acting as the cellar, or worse. His costume got so hot you can actually see the sweat pouring out in this one scene. Gross. This one also got the iconic montages in the series really going. When Ash finally gets his shit together to battle the Deadites, there's more than a few shots showing what he's prepping.
Groovy.
This is also something that shows up in other movies from time to time. More often than not, it's a reference to this movie. Though it opened up to pretty low numbers, the film has since cemented itself as one of the greatest cult classic films of all time, and exists on the short list of movies that are actually better than their original counterparts. Some short-sighted people like to call this a remake, but I've always seen it as more of a recap and then continuation of the story from the first one. In his own words, Bruce Campbell explains it like this.
People think that Ash, the character Ash, was stupid enough to go back to the cabin with a new group of friends, because the way it was retold, we didn't own the rights to our own movie. So we just shot a recap with different actors as though that was the recap, but people thought, what's with all, he's coming back to the same cabin with these new people? What? So there's a big debate of is Evil Dead 2 a remake or a sequel? If you really want to do it right, you take the first Evil Dead up to where the evil entity hits me, cut off all the recap, go right into Ash being thrown through the trees at the beginning, lands, play the movie. It would all make perfect sense.
Ash shows up in Sam Raimi's 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88. And if there's someone or something that's been in more Raimi movies than Bruce Campbell, it's this car. Everything looks about the same this time around, but a little better. The bridge, the cabin, the Necronomicon itself, even Ash's girlfriend. Bruce Campbell once again proves to us that he's a phenomenal physical actor and commands the first half of the movie basically by himself. One of my favorite parts is Ash running through the walls of the cabin. Hilarious every time. We get to see a little more of the Noby family, and the redneck side characters are pretty great.
Oh, fancy.
Ash's evil hand also makes a great adversary.
Holding my hand too tight.
Baby, I ain't holding your hand.
And of course, there's lots of blood. Even with the bigger budget this time around, the DIY charm of the movie is back as well. It really lends to making the movie better than some of its horror contemporaries. It seems like they were really trying to perfect their original film and make a good movie instead of a cash grab. There are a lot of demonic supernatural horror movies out there, and there is definitely an abundance of zombie movies, but none that combine horror and slapstick comedy so perfectly.
I'll swallow your soul! I'll swallow your soul! I'll swallow your soul!
Swallow this.
After Evil Dead 2, Sam Raimi, a longtime comic book fan, attempted to adapt The Shadow into a movie. When he couldn't secure the rights, he decided to create his own superhero. It was his first major studio picture and, more importantly, was commercially successful. Due partly to Raimi's success with Darkman, Dino De Laurentiis was willing to finance another sequel to Evil Dead. Inspired by stories like Gulliver's Travels, Sinbad, Jason and the Argonauts, and Conan the Barbarian, Sam Raimi and his brother Ivan Raimi started writing a script during the production of Darkman, picking up where Evil Dead 2 left off with Ash being sent back in time to the Middle Ages titled The Medieval Dead. It ended up being called Army of Darkness, and with a little more financial help from Universal, it was set for production.
Groovy.
Universal wanted a movie that could be a sequel to Evil Dead 2, but also wanted something that could be a standalone film as well. In 1991, with a budget of $12 million, the 100-day shoot began near Acton, California on the edge of the Mojave Desert. With hot conditions during the day and cold temperatures at night, the crew endured another challenging shoot. This time around, we've got Embeth Davidtz as Sheila, whom you may recognize from movies like Schindler's List or 13 Ghosts, but if I'm being honest here, come on. We all know her as Miss Honey. Bridget Fonda played another Linda, Ted Raimi played all kinds of characters, and of course Bruce Campbell reprised his legendary role of Ash, also pulling double duty playing Bad Ash.
I'm bad Ash, and you're good Ash.
For his cinematic foray into sword and sorcery, Sam Raimi brings back everything you loved about the first two movies. The Evil Dead's point of view is back, the Three Stooges slapstick is back, hell, even the mud is back. This time around, the movie is full-on comedy, and in my honest opinion, it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. This time, Ash is over this shit. I mean, completely over it.
You know your shoelace is untied.
He's had enough of this Deadite crap, and he comes fully prepared with enough one-liners to make your grandma blush.
I got news for you, pal. You ain't leading but two things right now. Jack and shit. And Jack left town.
Yo, she-bitch. Let's go.
Give me some sugar, baby.
Shop smart, shop S-smart.
You found me beautiful once.
Honey, you got real ugly.
Ash is also smarter this time around, having dealt with these undead freaks before.
It's a trick. Get an axe.
Okay, maybe smarter isn't exactly the right word. Have you ever seen a fantasy movie where the hero can't remember the magic words?
Klaatu, Veranda.
Either way, he's a futuristic force to be reckoned with, and these primitive screwheads haven't seen anything like him.
This is my boomstick!
They've never heard anything quite like him either.
First you want to kill me, now you want to kiss me. Blow.
Are all men from the future loud-mouthed braggarts?
Nope. Just me, baby. Just me.
This movie comes chock full with great practical effects like skeleton puppets, prosthetics, and of course, stop-motion skeletons straight out of Jason and the Argonauts. The movie also lives on in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy as well.
Tally-ho! Tally-ho.
Universal was unhappy with the original ending, thinking it was a little too dark and depressing for audiences, so Raimi had to reshoot it. This isn't so bad though. As Sam Raimi stated, there are two endings now, one in an alternate universe where Ash is screwed, and another universe where he's some cheesy hero.
Hail to the king, baby.
If you haven't seen the original ending, I highly recommend it. With that, the Evil Dead trilogy came to a close for a while, but there always seemed to be annual rumors about an Evil Dead 4 or an Army of Darkness 2 with Bruce Campbell, and even rumors of a remake, which were usually shot down or fizzled out due to extremely negative fan reaction. Then one fateful day on April 2011, on a Reddit AMA, Bruce Campbell dropped some heavy shit. Sam Raimi saw a short film called Panic Attack and was so impressed that he approached the director Fede Alvarez for a feature-length version. That ended up languishing in development hell, but Alvarez suggested something else, a remake of Raimi's original movie. It seemed Raimi had finally found his man. He could remake his original movie, but sit back in a producer's chair and see how someone else cut their teeth on the experience. With the script written by Alvarez and doctored by Diablo Cody, all three producers of the original trilogy, Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and Robert Tappert, were ready to go. Alvarez wanted to go with a more authentic approach to filmmaking and avoided using CGI as much as possible. He also wanted to get as realistic as possible. Well, as realistic as you can get with a supernatural horror flick. He and his team researched a lot of filmmaking magic tricks and illusions to make it work, and the nitty-gritty look and feel of the film is almost palpable. I'm gonna be straight with you here. Evil Dead went down in horror history as one of the goriest, coolest, most influential horror series of all time. It would always hold a place near and dear in all of our hearts. So when we first heard rumors of there being a remake of the original classic, it's safe to say the fandom was a little more than apprehensive about it. To us, remaking The Evil Dead was akin to remaking Gone with the Wind. You just don't do it. One silver lining was Sam Raimi being attached to produce, but still, we were nervous. But then we went and saw it.
I've never been so wrong in all my life.
God damn. This movie is amazing. From the opening scene, shit is hardcore.
Fucker! Fucker! I will kill you!
I love you, baby.
The film is super intense, and it's got everything. There's the usual group of kids, they find an evil book bound in human flesh, the forest gets a little frisky, the bridge is out, there's a trapdoor, there's a shotgun, there's a chainsaw, the Evil Dead POV returns. But even if this is technically the third time the story has been retold, the movie is different enough to stand on its own. Which all begs the question, is this a reboot or a sequel? There's evidence that it's kind of both. In the remake camp, we've got the obvious stuff like repeated dialogue.
God, what happened to her eyes?
We just cut up our girlfriend with a chainsaw. Does that sound fine?
She just cut her fucking arm off. Does that sound fine?
We're gonna get you, not another piece. We're gonna get you, not another piece.
Lots of visual references in the general layout of the story, but there's a lot more to suggest that it only starts out as a remake and then goes into sequel territory. In that camp, we've got the fact that Ash's car is still there. There are plenty of audio cues from the original like this.
You will die! Like the others before you. One by one we will take you.
There's already blood all over the trapdoor, and the Necronomicon has warnings all over it from its past victims. All of these things seem to point out that they're showing up years after Ash and his friends did.
The way we're looking at it is this thing appears at different places at different times. So I think the two Evil Dead movies can actually exist in a parallel universe. That book is just making the rounds.
These could all just be little references and callbacks to the original, but the Necronomicon seemingly flipping its own pages back to the beginning as if starting the cycle over again at the end of the movie makes me think they're a little more than that. This has happened to multiple groups of people, and it'll happen again.
What the fuck happened here?
The pretenses are different this time around. Our new main character, Mia, is at the cabin with her friends to help her quit using heroin cold turkey. Just like the original, though, the movie doesn't take long to get going. Mia getting over drugs is actually quite a great idea. When her soul becomes corrupted and she starts acting out, her friends think that she is just going through withdrawals, so they ignore her. They don't know that something much worse is going on.
From now on, she is going to do whatever it takes to get out of here.
They truly have no idea. They figure it out, though.
I'm scared that what's happening to me has something to do with the fucking witchcraft in the basement.
And one by one, they get got. This movie knows what you want. It knows what you're here for, and it's gonna give it to you. There are a few new things too. The Necronomicon won't burn, which was its only weakness in the original. There's a new evil entity that comes around to take over the world after it feasts on 5 souls. And there's a few new ways to dispatch the Deadites along with dismembering them.
I fear that the only way to stop those possessed by the spirits of the book is through the act of bodily dismemberment.
The book describes 3 specific ways. Alive burial, bodily dismemberment, and purification by fire.
Kandarian demons are by far the worst movie monster, and there's no way in hell I'd ever want to deal with them. Tricksters at heart, they know exactly how to fuck with you and are intensely hard to get rid of.
This thing is attached to Mia's soul like a leech.
The producers didn't want to mess with the iconic character of Ash Williams, so there is no replacement character. This was a good move on their part. Jane Levy's portrayal of the new lead Mia is phenomenal, and she really holds her own.
Jane Levy, by the end of this, she's taking this movie, by the shoulders, and she's screaming at it in the face. She's taking this movie over. So if people want to call her the new Ash, I say do it. She's earned it.
Bruce Campbell and the rest of the producers really let the actors know what they were in for.
Our very first audition was like, do you know what it feels like to get buried alive? Do you know what it feels like to have a tube down your throat? Do you know what it feels like after the 16th hour of work and you're covered in blood? Do you really want to do this? What's your stamina? Have you ever played sports? And I was like, yes, I want to do it. It sounds so good. It sounds so good. Cool, cool, cool.
I brought him into my office and said, look, I want to explain something to you. This is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. You're going to reach a time where you're going to want to rip all this makeup off your face and claw the contacts out of your eyes and just go in your camper and cry. And I said, don't rip your makeup off, but you can go in your camper and cry.
I sent an email to all the actors that we finally cast to like, look, here's what's going to be coming your way. You won't make a movie like this probably for the rest of your career. You're gonna go back and work on other movies after this, and you're gonna go, oh, this is nothing.
People complained about the original being too much to handle in the 80s, but this makes the first one look tame by comparison. It's almost too scary for even me sometimes, and I might actually prefer it to the original. It's a completely satisfying experience for longtime Evil Dead fans everywhere. The Evil Dead left a lasting legacy behind and has since spawned a media empire. Numerous video game adaptations have risen. Ash has fought both Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees in the Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash comic series, and the film even inspired a stage production, Evil Dead the Musical, which was produced with the permission of Raimi and Campbell and has been running since 2003. I've seen it, it's great. The series has been referenced in hundreds of other TV shows and movies like Donnie Darko, Stranger Things.
Take that down. It's inappropriate.
Spider-Man, Cabin in the Woods, Resident Evil 7, The Two Towers, Edgar Wright's Spaced,
Groovy.
Shaun of the Dead.
Now, as well as Mr. Sloman being off today, I'm afraid Ash is feeling a little bit under the weather.
And High Fidelity.
It's a brilliant film. It's so funny and violent, and the soundtrack kicks fucking ass.
There was also a TV show that any Evil Dead fan should check out. Bruce Campbell returned for it along with Ray Santiago, Dana De Lorenzo, Lucy Lawless, and of course, The Delta. It lasted 3 seasons before getting cancelled and left on a tantalizing cliffhanger with Ash heading off into a post-apocalyptic world a la Mad Max, but each and every episode was better than the last. They even head back to the cabin at one point.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
There have been rumors about combining the two film stories into one by having Ash team up with Mia somehow, but with Bruce Campbell announcing his retirement after the TV show's cancellation, that seems unlikely. But there is a new movie coming out in a couple years, and who knows where that'll take us. Something's for sure though, it'll be gory, it'll be scary, and there will be a chainsaw. There'll probably be a cabin too.
Groovy.